You are now live on air.
Hello, folks. We are live once again. You are listening to Beyond Sight and Sound. I had a little incident today with the phone and thought that we were liable to be truly beyond sight and sound this evening. It was almost an unfortunate circumstance, but hopefully, it looks like we are, in fact, live, and we are reaching out, and we'll see what happens. The audio's been a little glitchy tonight, but hopefully, everything willing, Skype will maintain, the internet will maintain, and we will be able to continue on with this and put out a show tonight. And speaking of shows, can't really have a show without listeners, so we appreciate all the listeners out there who are tuning in, whether it be from the confines of your computer, your tablet, your not so smart smartphone, as apparently mine is a little dumb tonight, but that's the way it goes. So we're still going to try to do this. We'll get everything going, and hopefully everything does prove to work out all right. But that does bring to light another thing with working out okay. Sometimes you make finds and you find those certain special items. What in the world do... Oh, we're going to take this call real quick, Brandon. We'll bring him in. You may be interested in speaking with this gentleman anyhow. My guest tonight is actually Brandon. Goes by Swanzey Searcher on Facebook. And we will bring in this caller that just popped up on the screen here and see what all he has to say to us tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, it looks like we are joined by none other than Mr. Chris Turner of the Ring Finders. How's it going, Chris?
Good. Just dropped off my grandson. I'm in the car in traffic, so I just stopped by and say hi. Just wanted to say congratulations to you all, and so happy to hear this story, see that you guys found the owner. Fantastic.
Yes, we did. It was a work in progress and definitely a long road to get there. And we've just actually went live ourselves, and we'll make sure to cover the story in the show. The ring was returned earlier this afternoon to the gentleman that owned it.
That's incredible. I love it. Was it 39 years?
Yes, we're figuring up at least 39 years, I believe. Isn't that correct, Brandon?
Yeah, it's either 39 or 40 years, definitely.
Wow. Well, that's I just love hearing stories like that. I think I mentioned last time we had a member find a ring that was 50 years old, and the gentleman was still alive, was given back to him. And all these rings are incredible that they have the stories attached to them, and they get to continue. So I just want to say congratulations. Really happy to hear you got your ring back. I can't really hear anything, so I'm going to pass it on to you, Josh. Thank you. And I'm going to go home and listen to this show tonight.
All right. Well, we appreciate hearing from you, Chris. It's always good to hear from you. You're welcome anytime.
Thank you, Josh. Oh, have a fun show, you guys.
All right.
Hey, thanks,
We'll see you,
Thanks for
Chris.
calling in.
Chris Turner, CEO and founder of the ringfinders.com. Well, that's definitely an interesting way to start the show off. And speaking of rings, you know, sometimes we find them and many of them are not able to be returned. But some are. And, you know, when we can find those circumstances where we can return them, it's nice to be able to go ahead and track down the owner, although sometimes it is a lot of work, and we're going to get into that with our show tonight. But let's go ahead and take a minute there, and why don't you introduce yourself, give listeners an idea, you know, how did you get started in the hobby? What spurred you into metal detecting? Was there any sort of influence, family members that use detectors, or just something you always thought would be neat to do?
Well, to be honest with you, Josh, I started metal detecting pretty much on my own. I had, been curious about it for a few years. It was nothing that I even saw anybody do before. Didn't know what a metal detector was till probably my mid-20s. Always been kind of interested in our own local history. I'm from small town America up here in New Hampshire. Every house in town around here is, 1700s land. Most of these towns were established in the 1750s, and you go into the historical societies and the libraries, and you see all these collections of things that people have found in their old home sites themselves, in their grandma's basement, and it's all neatly put out in these display cases. So, it piqued my interest. Then I saw it was an advertisement in a magazine about a metal detector. It was, the Garrett metal detector at the time, and I said I was kind of interested in it, so I was kicking it around for a while. I would mention it to my wife once in a while, and then, my father-in-law had heard me talking about it off and on, and then those stupid digger shows came out on television, and I said, you know what, if these idiots can do this, anybody can.
Right.
So then after that started, my father-in-law said, basically, I want to thank you for what, you've helped do for my household and for my family and everything, and bought me a gift certificate to a local dealer of metal detectors here in the next town over from where I live, and I bought my Ace 250 and hit the roads with it.
Oh, well, see, now that's nice, because having a local dealer in my area, we don't really have the luxury of a local dealer. I mean, my dealer, the guy that I deal with is hours away.
Yeah, this guy's literally the next town over. I mean, it's probably 15 minutes drive from where I live, and I remember seeing his store when it was in the next town over in the bigger city of Keene. I say city, but it's like 15,000 people. I remember seeing it was always called Streeter's Treasure Hunting. And I'm like, what the hell is treasure hunting exactly? But I remember seeing the gold pans in the windows and the sluice boxes. I never remembered seeing a metal detector when it was in the city. But then, when I did some research online, saying, okay, well, I've got this, I don't want to call it a passion at the time, but I was kind of curious and intrigued. I was like, what do I do? Where do I buy this? This must be an online-only thing. So I started doing research metal detectors, and it popped right up, to his metal detecting shop.
Oh, so you're kind of going, oh, that's what it is.
I didn't even know he had moved, to be honest with you. I was like, well, this can't be the same guy, even though it's got the same name on it. And, again, when it turned around to my father-in-law, shows up one day, and he hands me a gift card to the place. And obviously he knew it was there. And went out and bought my 250, and it's been over since.
Wow. So, you started out with an Ace 250 then, but if I remember correctly, you run a AT Pro now, correct?
That's correct. I ran the Ace 250 for my entire first year, all the way up through last winter. Even back at my birthday, which was last October, everybody always asked me, what do you want for your birthday? What do you want for Christmas? That type of stuff. I was like, well, I'm kind of hooked on this hobby, so just get me gift certificates to this place, and something comes up down the road. If I need a piece of equipment, I need a new digging shovel or something, I'll go up there and I'll buy the tool that I need. And then this winter, I've gotten more of them for Christmas, gift certificates from families and friends, and none of these people had ever heard of metal detecting, really. But I have to show everybody who walks into my house what I found. So they all said, well, you're passionate about it enough where, sure, we'll get you the gift certificate. And, of course, I didn't end up with the shirts and the socks and crap at holidays anymore, so that was kind of nice, too. It was a little side bonus.
There you go.
And so I went this winter in January and actually bought the AT Pro, played with it in my garage for countless hours, played with it in my living room on my coffee table, played with it everywhere, waiting for that damn snow to thaw. And pretty much knew everything you can know about the machine other than actually putting it to the dirt.
Well, and that's good. You gotta put the time in with your machine, learn what it's telling you. I mean, you get out there and you hit the dirt with a new machine, you don't know what it's telling you, you're gonna get frustrated, you're gonna get disappointed. You gotta kind of relax and have fun with it. And I guess in your particular situation, especially with all the snow, you're kind of snowed in, so you're still kind of, well, I'm still going to learn this thing. I'm learning the tones. What sort of sound does this coin make? Or what sort of numbers am I getting?
And that's exactly what I did. Is I went through every piece of jewelry my wife owns. I went through the silver rings that I found last year, the few silver coins I had found. I was putting them next to nails. I was putting them, near a piece of chewed-up can slaw. I was putting them near everything because the target separation on the AT Pro compared to the Ace 250 is phenomenal. So I was trying to figure out what these little sounds, like everybody has said in the past, and I've heard you say it, listen to that sound within the sound. And that's what I was trying to figure out. Because, again, I'd been watching YouTube videos even before I started metal detecting because I wanted to know what I was doing once I got out into the field.
Right. And there are little nuances in those tones. You've just got to listen to them, and after a while, time with your machine, you start to pick up on them without even realizing it sometimes, to where if you step back and think, you come across a target and you're like, yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking it was going to be, and in retrospect, you look back and go, wow, a year ago, could I have done that? I don't know. I really am learning stuff.
And that's what was kind of funny. My wife says that, you're playing with a new toy that you can't even really use, because, of course, that's what I did all the winter months. Right up through March, we have pretty heavy snow on the ground. So I spent time here and there playing in the garage. I didn't even have the thing assembled. I was just playing with the controls and the coil. So I didn't even have the whole thing put into piece. I was just playing with the two parts that mattered at that point.
Right. Yeah, kind of hook the coil up to it and maybe strap it on the shaft and hang the shaft off the end of a cinder block or something like that. And, well, it's making noise. It's working. We'll do it this way.
How I looked at it. Yep. Hey, I thought that was the best learning experience right there, was saying, hey, if I can get familiar to what some of these things sound like before I get out there, I'm not going to look like an idiot with all my buddies I detect with.
Right. And it's a good way to pass the time when you're snowed in.
Oh, yeah. Otherwise, you go stir crazy up here.
Right. Work with the detector, do the research. A lot of times during the winter like that, I'll clean coins and research. And, well, when I'm snowed in, a lot of times I do the coin roll hunting and stuff like that, too.
Right. I did a lot of library research and going to the historical societies, looking at the old town maps, because you can walk into my town library, for example, and they have maps that date all the way back to the 1780s. You can't take them out, but you're welcome to go in and look at them. So, I have what you call a not-so-smart smartphone at times, and I was literally panoramic taking images of these on my phone, so it would create one large map, sending it to my email, and then I could print it out.
Nice. It's a good way to do it. And I love them old maps. They don't go quite that far back for me here. I think maybe I can get back to like the 1860s, 1870s, but that's nowhere near the history you guys have out there in New Hampshire.
Yeah, we're lucky for that too. And another thing is I just was taking rides around town, and you see people that have a big field behind their house. It's along, of course, our major river up here is the Ashwillet River. And, of course, everybody did all their things in the 1700s along the river. They settled there. They would clean in the river. They'd clean their clothes. You know, they do everything in these rivers. And
Absolutely.
I always looked at this whole town is just revolved around this river because it's a town known as the town of covered bridges. So all the tourism goes to these areas too. So I was looking at all that stuff. I was doing some door knocking in the winter before, again, I even got out on the ground with my AT Pro saying, hey, you know, this is what I do this coming year. Do you mind if I take a look around on it? I went to the town, got permission from the Conservation Society to go to our conservation lands, and I just basically was setting up a plenty of time to get out there and learn my machine as soon as I was able to get the grounds up.
Right. I just hearing that it's the town of covered bridges kind of brings this vision of, you know, you do a search for tourist attractions or something, and it probably just shows covered bridges.
That's it. And there's plenty of them in this town. There's 5 covered bridges in this town. People stop and they get their pictures taken next to it. You know, and they've got the original maker's dates on the bridge and all this other stuff. And they restore them, you know, off and on when they need to. But for the most part, I mean, they look pretty original. If you look at some of the old town pictures of what the old ones looked like, they paint them once in a while. They replace the floorboards when needed to make sure they're structurally sound. But, you know, that's just kind of the little claim to fame for this corner of the state. Right,
so right there where you are in your area, there's probably not a whole lot going on.
Oh, no. If you don't hunt and you don't fish, you don't do anything.
Right. Disneyland for hay.
Yeah, that's it. Hay and corn.
Wow. So, really, you've been in the hobby a relatively short time. I mean, you've got, 2 years?
2 years this October was made 2 years, so just over, yes.
Okay, and you've done okay for yourself. You've found some pretty decent stuff.
I have, you know, and I was spoiled right from the beginning. A couple of buddies of mine asked me if I wanted to come down to Northfield with them because they knew I just started metal detecting. They had been doing it for a little while. My first non-clad coin I ever dug, and I'd only been there maybe a half an hour. We were in this potato farm, and I got this killer $1 to $half signal. I didn't know what the hell it was, and so I dig it out of the ground and kind of looking at this thing, and it looked like a large cent to me. And I never, of course, it dug a large cent, but I've seen enough people dig them, you know, on the videos. And it said 1788 on it, so I called Jim over, and Jim tells me that's a Commonwealth, Massachusetts copper coin. And I said, "You're kidding me, right?"
Wow.
So right then, that spoiled me right there.
Yeah, that's one of those, if you're just getting into the hobby like that, and you make a find like that, it's like, geez, where do I go from here? How do I top this?
Right. And then, you know, I found some small silver dimes. You know, I found a couple of Barbers, a couple of Mercs, a couple of Rosies. I've still yet to find a silver quarter, half, or a dollar, or anything like that, but you know, this year with the AT Pro, I've been fortunate enough to find a couple of reals, lots of large cents, lots of King George coppers, some really nice War of 1812 buttons, obviously miscellaneous other Civil War buttons and regular home buttons. And you know, you find that there's tombacks around here. There's dandy buttons. I mean, buttons are one thing that I love to see, and there's a ton of them around.
Oh yeah, we've all got our own little vices in the hobby, so to speak. For some it's coins, for others it's relics, and for many it's buttons, because they're each one, like Charlie and Keebler from the Stealth Diggers like to say, each one's kind of like a snowflake. They're, for the most part, you dig up a button, it's different than the one before and the one to come.
Right, exactly. You just got to keep at it. You know, it's just one of those things that I enjoyed as a hobby. I don't plan on ever getting rich off of it, but I always have enjoyed hiking, so I'm still getting my walking time in. I'm still getting my outdoor time in, and heck, you know, you might find something decent if you just keep looking at it.
Right. So no influences as far as family members detecting or anything like that. You've been kind of the first to do it and took to it like a duck to water, so to speak.
Yeah, and I've been lucky enough where, we don't have any clubs around here, but there are quite a few locals around here that do a lot of metal detecting. Like I said, the owner of that shop, he's been metal detecting probably since metal detectors have been out. He goes to the
Wow.
Caribbean once a year. I mean, he's found pretty much everything you can possibly find. So if you ever have a question, or he'll even throw you a few spots here and there. Oh, you can check this out, and you can try this field. I've done it before, but you never know. So he's always willing to help, and there's been a lot of good camaraderie a bunch of guys around here have, and we go out together, a few of us at a time, and we just hope somebody finds something good. That's all that matters.
Right, that's the important part, and sounds like you've got a good resource there for find identification if you're having problems IDing something, too.
That's it. Well, Facebook helps with that. I am on a couple of forums that are local around here. Again, they're not clubs, but they are forums, and you can put it in the WhatsApp columns, and some of these guys have been doing it so long, usually within 5 minutes somebody knows the answer.
Right. Wow. So, you got your AT Pro then, like you said, there around Christmas, January, playing around with it and everything, and you get out, you're trying to make some finds, and, these finds that you've made this year, they've all come from the AT Pro.
Correct. My H250 has not come off the nail in the garage since I bought the AT Pro.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nope, it's a good backup.
Still works for a backup. And then in April, I believe it was,
yes,
you made a nice find, a first on many levels for yourself, but it comes with a story, so to speak, that wound up leaving you with more questions than answers, I do believe.
Oh, it sure did. It sure did.
So
went to a. Do you want me to get into that, or?
Yeah. What was it like when you found that day? I mean, you're out there, you're hunting along a hay field. I guess it's nice weather. And you probably weren't expecting to pop a gold class ring out.
No, not at all. I mean, when I saw, it wasn't real deep. It might have been 7 or 8 inches deep. And when I dig big plugs, so I was lucky enough not to drill it with the shovel or anything like that. But what happened was, I got the signal. To me, again, fairly new with the machine. It was a 61, 62. Everything I've dug in that area has been buttons or crap, one or the other. So when I see the gold shining in the hole, and I pulled it out, cleaned it off, and I see, the big stone in the top, and around the stone it says Duxbury High School, and it's got this little man on one side of it, and the state of Massachusetts on the other, and there were initials on the inside. So talking to the other people that were around, some of these guys that have been doing this for a long time, they said, oh, that should be real easy to return if you're interested in returning it. And I said, well, of course I'm going to try to return it. I said, I have no interest in keeping this. This isn't mine. And like you said, this opened up a whole can of worms. I tried everything in the world I could possibly do, suggestions from some of the other hobbyists, what I looked up online. I wasn't listening to the radio shows at that point yet. I tried everything that I thought would have been the best thing to do to try to return the ring, and it got me more and more frustrated, like you wouldn't believe.
Right, you had even, I believe you had called the Duxbury School, and they weren't any help.
No, they were no help. They told me that they didn't have an actual archives department that could go through the records from that year, so I called the Duxbury Library. The library gave me a link to look up the yearbooks from Duxbury. They're all available online. You don't need to go into the library to do them, because, of course, this town is about 110 miles from where I found the ring. I found the ring in Dublin, New Hampshire, and the school was out of Duxbury, Massachusetts, which is quite a haul. So going through the library's references of the 72 yearbook, there was no exact initial matches with anybody in that yearbook. I tried the year before, I tried the year after, no exact matches. So then all these scenarios come out for the fact that really they either had bought the ring later in life after being married, maybe it was an alias name that they were using, blah, blah, blah. I tried different variations of switching the letters around to the yearbook. None of that worked.
Wow. And even went so far as trying to contact other classmates from the 72 class.
I did. Actually, before that, I even called the Duxbury Clipper, which is a newspaper in that small town that distributes to pretty much everybody in the town. And by doing so, they put in a full-page ad. You know, it was entitled "New Hampshire Man Finds Duxbury Class Ring," and they did a write-up about it, about the initials. They posted a photograph of the ring in their paper. I got zero response out of that, so I started Googling some of the names just into Google of that graduating class, and I came across one person that had a like a Whole Foods website, and it was her name, and the website had been closed down for 5 or 6 years. Well, I still sent her an email thinking, hey, you know, maybe she's got the same email, maybe she comes back to the site once in a while. And this was back in June. The paper put out the article in May. Everything else I'd done at that point had been exhausted, and finally, after a month and a half, mid-July, I got an email back from this lady from the graduating class of 72, and she said she'd asked around if anybody knew. I hadn't heard back, and then finally, she actually sent me an email telling me that she remembered a guy that graduated in that class. Well, he didn't graduate in the class, but he was there for freshman and sophomore year. She recognized, you know, she remembered his name. She didn't know his middle initial. So I took that name and tried to run with it, and again, it was like taking that test car and putting it into a brick wall.
Right, there. It seems like, so far anyway, you're going, okay, we'll try this. Well, great, there's another dead end.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened, and then finally I joined Facebook a couple months ago, almost 3 months ago, and you know, again, I tried finding this guy. I found nothing but like some land purchases from the owner of the man's name, but nothing about where he lived or anything like that. And then I posted it on Facebook. I remember talking to Chris Turner back on October 1st about it when he was on your show that time. I tried everything I could. I remember it was your show that Chris Turner was on, and he said, you know, send me the information, send me what you know, all this other stuff. So I sent it, and you were obviously able to track this guy down. And I'll tell you what, for a 6-month journey, for you to be able to track this guy down, it made all the world of difference to me.
Well, and this was one of those situations, too, where when you called into the show that night, let's see, Chris Turner was on, Jeff Lubert from Relic Roundup was on, and we've all had experience in this sort of thing, and it was kind of stumping us, because we're like, wait a minute, class rings are loaded with detail. They shouldn't be this difficult.
Oh, yeah, that's what I remember Jeff was saying that, too. He goes, you've got the name of the school, you've got the inside initials, first, middle, and last. Then I went on the avenue, and he asked it too. He said, is there another Duxbury? And I said, yes, there's 3 Duxburys in New England that have a high school, but on the opposite side of the ring, there's a globe with a state of Massachusetts logo on it. And one little detail I didn't even notice, but the ring owner showed me today, that through a loop, if you look close enough, there's a little star within that state of Massachusetts logo that pinpoints to the town of Duxbury, Massachusetts.
Oh, wow. So another interesting aspect of the ring we learned.
Yeah, that was something I hadn't even learned yet at that point. And then, of course, the Duxbury Clipper, and I was confused myself too, is on the other side of the ring there's a man with a sword in one hand and a scroll in the other. And everybody I had talked to said, looks like the Minuteman logo that they use in a lot of Massachusetts stuff. And I said, okay, well, I'll run with that. So I got
exactly.
A hold of
I remember you using that terminology on the show for it, because you're like, well, it's, for lack of a better description, my best guess is a Minuteman.
Right. So, you know, I got a hold of Jostens, which was the ring manufacturer, and talked to this guy back and forth who's been working with the company for, I think he said 30 years. And he said, I can try to go through some archived ring designs that maybe we discontinued. So I sent him all the pictures that I had of the ring, very clear, very detailed pictures. And he recognized, obviously, the Mass logo. The high school made sense because they've had several from there. He had no recollection nor any symbol that even resembled what this little man on the other side of the ring represented.
Wow.
I was looking for a clue. You know, if this meant something to somebody and they could tell me what the design was, maybe I could look for somebody else in one of those classes that might have been a fencer, for example, or something to that effect.
Yeah, exactly. Some sort of symbolism to help tie it together.
And that was a dead end also.
Right. So I think that's around the point I had you send me the information. Figured, well, no guarantees, but we'll take a shot. We'll see if maybe we can't get some closure here. And
yep, I remember sending you the pictures and all the info that I had done. And then after that, I remember talking to you on the phone from my work that day. We talked for close to an hour about, I went with this route, I went this route, I tried this. And so you pretty much were taking mental notes saying, okay, well, I guess I don't need to do that, I don't need to do that. But then you were able to take the actual name and run with it.
Right. We got some other people involved, and, everybody was trying to see what we could do, which at this point, it wasn't a matter of who found the ring owner first. It's just, let's find the ring owner.
Exactly. There was a couple other people that tried to help there. Tom was trying to help there. Linda was trying to help. There were other people that were doing their things or would send me messages too saying, did you try this? Did you try looking into that? Did you try, all these different avenues? And they were trying it at the same time as well as I was doing. And unfortunately for me and everybody else that was trying to do it, we all were running into the same dead ends, like this person doesn't exist.
Right. We were pretty certain that, we've got caller calling in here. We'll bring them in. Hello, caller.
How's it going, Mr. Josh?
Mr. Kenny Moore.
Yes, sir.
Well, how are you?
I'm all right. If you can't hear me on this phone, it's because it's been in the river twice and slid down a hill. So it's been in 2 buckets of rice. I'm fixing to get another phone, but I just wanted to congratulate Swan there on a job well done, and then you to jump in there and find this guy is just awesome, because with the stuff that I find, it's very difficult for me to ever find the owner of these relics. So that's pretty cool, and just well done.
Well, thank you, and finding this guy wasn't no easy task. I'll tell you that.
It was definitely a 6-month process that it just got more and more frustrating as I went. But I swore hell to high water. I wasn't going to I wasn't going to stop trying no matter what. And I got so many people in the meantime, friends and everybody that says, just why don't you melt the ring? Why don't you melt the ring? And the ring owner today even said that, how come you didn't get frustrated enough to melt it after all this time? And the only line I could give him was, it's not my ring to melt.
Right.
Well, once again, that's a good story, and hopefully that it's magazine worthy. So hopefully someone is listening that they got anything to do with some of our magazines and stuff, maybe they'll put that little article in there, because it's a feel good story. Often, when I find the stuff that I find, the Civil War stuff, it's more about the history of it, and most of the times that didn't turn out well for those individuals. So
right.
To go out and find rings and stuff, and then be able to return it 6 months later. And I know people have probably done that before, but this is your personal experience. That's what makes it cool. And once again, just a great job with that. So I'm going to get off here and finish listening to the show, man.
All right. Thanks for the call, Kenny.
Hey, thanks, Kenny. Thanks for the kind words.
Yep.
And he does bring to light a good point. This is... People have been returning rings for years and years and years, and obviously some of us that have had a longer amount of time in the hobby have been able to return quite a fair amount of rings. But this is a special benchmark for you, as this is your first. It was your first class ring, your first piece of gold, and this has been a 6-month journey, basically, with a lot of dead ends.
Well, like Kenny said, too, most of what I dig up, you pull a button out of the ground that's, 150, 200 years old, and every one of those, you create a story in your head of how it got there, and, and why it got there and all this other stuff. But again, with this ring, it was just a little bit different because this was something that obviously the other things you have no chance of returning, and they're not even traceable really to that point. I mean, yeah, you could probably figure out some soldiers from the area, but this was very specific as to who the owner of this ring would be eventually, obviously very specific to it. But in the meantime, it was fun as much as it was frustrating when you get a good lead and you think, oh man, I've got this guy in my sights right now, or a woman, because I don't know if it was a man or woman.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got it in my sight.
You get that promising glint of light, and it's like, yes, we're right there, and then it's just dashed.
Oh yeah, it was like a slap in the face every single time.
Right, and I can remember talking with Tom myself, telling him, I'm convinced we're on the right track. This is the guy. We'll get him. We just got to stay determined, and he did prove to be very, very difficult to find.
And, in the conclusion to this, I'm not going to say his name because he asked me not to.
Right.
He's made it a point for 30 years to be difficult to find, because he's a very big businessman, and he wants to be able to protect his family and his own livelihood. He doesn't do Facebook. He's not on social media. He's elusive on purpose, and that's exactly pretty much the best way to put it. And he says, well, that's a good news to me. He said that it took you that long to find it, and he kind of laughed about that. He says, but it's amazing that Josh was able to even track me down at all. And I said, yeah, he's a sleuth in his day job.
Yeah, I mean, when I initially contacted him, because I went through, there were a number of days where I was dialing a number of phone numbers trying to track this gentleman down. And when I finally made that initial contact and spoke to him in person, understandably, he was a little skeptical and a little guarded, didn't want to come right out at first with information. And, I can understand the skepticism there because this is a guy from Massachusetts. He lost a ring in New Hampshire. What's a nobody legally blind guy in northwestern Ohio got anything to do with it? And how the hell did he find me?
Right. He had questions about that. I'll tell you, that was one thing. He said it, and he said it to me today, if it was something that I was able to track him down and do it on my own, he says, being that you're as local as you are, that would make sense. And then he asked me again where you were from, and I said, well, Josh is from the outskirts of Ohio. And, I went over it with him that, you've been metal detecting for a long time. I explained, what ring finders was as far as Chris goes, and how other people have gone about it, how he could have even posted, obviously in more recent years, that you lost it, and then there's guys in the area who will try to find it for you. He didn't even realize that network of metal detectors existed. His impression of metal detecting was when he used to go down at the beach as a child or even as an adult, was seeing these guys go back and forth with these sand scoops. He never really considered other parts of it other than that. And he had mentioned Civil War relic hunting, up and down the East Coast. He said he never really considered people would actually try to return anything.
Right. And that's another thing with this too, is this person, this another avenue that now another person finds out about the Ring Finders Incorporated and the whole group of specialists that are out there trying to do the right thing, because it's stories like this, they're good human interest stories, it helps keep the hobby in a good light and all of that.
Right. Yeah, it gives us a really, really great name, and if anybody has the opportunity to do it or has done it, and especially for the first time, I would have to say it's a feeling of elation. I mean, it was a long journey. I'm glad I did it. I'm glad you got involved and helped me complete this. It was just one of those things that, whether it's just good karma or just for the fact that you need to know you did something right, it's just one of those, it was a great story to go through.
Right, and it's something that, if anybody does get that opportunity, it's a good thing just for experience sake, I would say, for everybody in the hobby to experience at least one time. Go ahead, caller.
How you doing, Mr. Josh and Mr. Swanzey?
All right.
This is Kevin Strahan.
Mr. Strahan.
Hey, Kevin, how are you?
What's going on, man? The one thing that y'all touched on, but you haven't really talked about it, is This is Swanzey's first ring. Who would have already given up by now? Not what, 99% of people?
Right.
They
It
would have
would
given
be
up.
easy.
I can't find it.
Right. And that's one comical aspect of this too, is that Swanzey said that, I believe it was the Duxbury Clipper?
Correct.
Okay, they ran a full-page article trying to get people to come forward so, maybe we could find the owner of this ring, and nobody come forward due to this newspaper article. The bit of irony on the backside of all of this is when we did finally make a connection with that ring owner, I believe he was located, 20 minutes out of Duxbury?
Yeah, 20 minutes north.
And had a sister who lives in Duxbury. But nobody
Still to
put
this
two and
day.
two together.
And another thing is if anybody asks you, well, Josh, what am I going to get out of listening to your show? Well, what did Swanzey get? Swanzey got exactly what he wanted. He got to get on the show. You had reached out and had so much help for him and helped him achieve what he wanted to achieve. And now look how many friends he has now that he didn't have before, for being, on your show, and then you helping him, and then everything, it was like a big puzzle, and everything came together. And now Swanzey's probably going to have some new places to hunt because of that. And it's nothing negative come out of this whole thing. Nothing but positives.
Right.
I appreciate
there were
that,
a
Kevin.
lot of dead ends, but we finally came to an end result.
Now,
Well, like Kevin touched on too. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just say, like what you touched on, my joining Facebook a couple of months ago was one of the best things that happened to me, not only just for this ring return, but I met so many people that I love seeing what these people find. I love the positive reinforcement behind it. You yourself, Kevin, you're willing to post on everybody's forums. You're willing to post on what people find, whether it's the prize-winning gold coin or if it's somebody like me who finds something for the first time. It's that positive reinforcement that gives people the drive to keep going. You see so much negative of every other thing out there, and it's nice to have something that you can always go back to and say, hey, these are guys that maybe I've never seen in person, but they're doing the same thing I'm doing every day. We're trying to dig up these things of historical value, never necessarily monetary value. And again, that's how I looked at this ring. This wasn't something I was interested in. I've never been to the beach. For me to find a piece of gold, it was cool to find, but it was even cooler to think that I could give it back to somebody.
That's
Well,
right.
I didn't have the luck like you did. My first gold ring I found was at an old Methodist church. It was the first church in the state of Mississippi. Don't know how old the ring was. Had initials on it. I gave it to the preacher. Preacher kept it for a while. Nobody claimed it. He gave it back to me, and I'm like, no, you don't need to, you don't need to do that. You keep it. And they're like, look, we've already asked everybody here. We have a lot of new people here because all the older people have passed away, and there's nothing we can do with it. And I was like, well, just keep it a little longer. He goes, well, I'll be honest with you. If you don't go ahead and take it back, I don't know what's going to happen to it. So you might as well go ahead and take it back. So I didn't have any luck, and I kept it for a little while, but I could never find the owner, and somebody had told me more than likely the owner had probably passed away a long time ago. And I kept it for a while. I didn't know what to do with it. But I eventually just, I sold it to somebody and let them melt it down. I just, with you, I don't know how long it took, but I kept it about 4 or 5 months, and, could never figure out who owned it, so I didn't know what to do with it because it was my first ring I ever found. But, I guess I did the right thing. And you had a big honking gold ring. It was bigger than what I had. But, it's good that you held out. I didn't get to find mine, but you got to find yours. So, and you get a good feeling about it. And you're going to get something good for Christmas this year because you did that. Santa Claus is watching you.
It was like Christmas today, I'll tell you. It was one of the most rewarding things I've done in a long time, and my wife even looked at me and said, "I'm proud of that you held on to that ring for that amount of time." And again, it wasn't an admiration thing. It was, for me, it was the right thing to do. You tried your damn hardest. Yours would have been a hell of a lot less easily returned. Obviously, you didn't have all the telltale signs. I thought mine would have been a hell of a lot easier too, to be honest with you. I didn't realize this was going to be a half a year process, but in the end it worked out. And like you said, the puzzle pieces, Josh was the final piece to the puzzle, thank goodness.
Well, good job. I'm glad Kenny called in, because he told me, if I don't get a chance to call in, make sure to let Josh know I am listening.
Yes, Kenny does like to follow.
And yeah, good job, Swanzey and Josh, and y'all keep up the good work.
All right, thanks for the call, Kevin.
All right, bye.
But when you called into the show with Chris Turner, you were trying to describe these details on this ring, and before we get out of here, I'd like to cover that stuff real quick. This guy was able to fit these pieces together for us quite well, and he had a very good explanation for all of the designs and markings on the ring.
Beyond even what I figured it out.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I thought was so neat. I mean, the guy had all the right answers. He knew where he was, what field he had lost that in, where he was in the field. But to try and recover it at that point, I mean, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. But he was able to go through and explain these markings on the ring. So why don't you go ahead and explain what were the symbols and designs and the symbolism behind those?
Well, I mean, like you said, he was able to describe where he lost the ring, literally to how many feet away from the tree line next to the hayfield he was. Now, the little man on the side of the ring, which I thought was the Minuteman or maybe a fencer, he explained to me he had it specially made, and it was Miles Standish from, obviously, the Pilgrims. And the reason for the Miles Standish is the town of Duxbury, I guess, was Miles Standish's final resting place. Yeah, basically the side of the ring had Miles Standish on the side of it. Basically from the Pilgrim days, it was not the Minuteman, which I'd previously thought. There was several flowers all over the ring, which turns out were Mayflowers. So it put a story back to everything being back to Duxbury, where Miles Standish was buried in his final resting place, which was also, I guess, his last hometown that he lived in. So all those details were put onto the ring, especially by, the owner of the ring, by seeing that he was paying homage to his own hometown, I guess, in the best way he could. And the reason for the ring being in Dublin, New Hampshire, was he left the school of Duxbury his sophomore year, did a year in Dublin at a small Christian academy. So during that year, he actually lost it there, and then the next year he transferred to another school back in Massachusetts. So, between the year he had the ring, he said he may have wore it a couple of times.
Right, and that explains how it turns up. A ring from Massachusetts comes up at the edge of a hayfield in New Hampshire.
Exactly, and this school is out in the middle of nowhere. This isn't a public school that's on the side of the highway by any means. It's something that's out in the middle of the woods. It's a private place. You wouldn't even know the school exists unless you take 15 minutes off of any major roadway just to get to it. It's a very, very private school.
Right. Well then, and we do come to find out that after 6 months of searching and, quite a bit of effort, we are able to track down the owner. You were able to return the ring this afternoon. Excuse me. And for you, a first-time return, your experience, what you went through today and got to experience, is that something that you would recommend for other people who may have this opportunity?
I would recommend it to anybody who has the opportunity, especially if you find your first class ring and you're iffy about what to do with it. I can assure you that the look on the returned owner's face is more than priceless compared to the amount of money that you're going to get out of that ring. And I'm not going against anybody who finds gold at the beach. That's entirely your option. But if this is something that personalized, if you're looking for something rewarding as an experience, this is the way to go. I mean, like Kevin said, there's things that you'll never be able to return. You know, these things are old, they're Civil War, they're military related. There's a sad story behind all of them, but you don't have that opportunity. If you have the opportunity, I highly recommend it. I drove 110 miles each way to return this to the guy, and I'd do it again tomorrow if I found another one from the same town.
That's great. That's good to hear, and it's good to hear that it was such a good outcome and a happy ending, because a lot of times our hobby does capitalize on the misfortune of others in a sense. But it's good to be able, when there are those opportunities to return these items, it's great to try and return them when you can. Like I said, that's the basis of Chris Turner's Ring Finders and what his group of specialists do, which Chris is a great guy. For those who are still listening, check out the Ring Finders page at theringfinders.com. He was on the show a while back. He's an absolutely great guest. Brandon, Swanzey, definitely appreciate you sitting down and taking time to discuss your experiences today and the 6 months in the making, so to speak. It goes to show that sometimes the effort is worth the end result.
It was to me, for sure. Again, it was much worth what I put into it. The look on his face when he told me he's never lost a piece of jewelry in his life since that class ring. I wish I was clever enough at the time to say you didn't lose it, you only misplaced it for 40 years. I didn't think of that at the time, but his expressions, his thanks, he shook my hand several times. He was very pleasant to my wife, and, because I had told him that, she's had to endure my talking about this ring and researching this ring, and I got to find the guy. She's been listening to it for 6 months. And,
she's glad I'm getting rid of it.
She is so damn glad that ring is out of this house, I bet you.
Well, nothing wrong with that. Definitely nothing wrong with that. And that is another interesting point with the story, too, is that this guy, he's only ever lost one piece of jewelry, and this was it. But now the story continues with that piece of jewelry. It's been reunited with the owner, and that's great to hear. Like I said, Swanzey, we appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us. It was good to share the story, and hopefully the listeners got a little bit out of it. As far as the listeners, 1000 Mics had a big glitch tonight. We tried to hang in there. Apologies, but hey, 1000 Mics is out of my control. I can only control what's on my end. If anybody is still there with us, by all means, if you enjoyed the show, please feel free to like and rate the channel. Always appreciate the support of the listeners, the people calling in, the likes, the ratings, the comments on Facebook. If you would like to be a guest on the show, you have some interesting content or a topic you might like to hear, I'm not hard to find. Drop me a line, and we'll see what we can do. For everyone else, we gotta go before 1000 Mics glitches out on us again. But we appreciate everyone for dropping in, and tune in next week. Until then, stay persistent, stay determined, don't give up, because sometimes you do find out that effort and hard work is worth the end result. Either you make that find, or you find the end to the story that you've been trying to unravel. We'll see you next week, folks.